back. I want to share with you today some thoughts on the education process, on educating yourself. Here at That Makes Sense in what we do, we're huge on this idea of self-educating, and that comes through reading and listening to audio recordings and doing your video and internet research and those kind of things. And one of the reasons that we are is that there's so much knowledge out there in the world to be gained by reading what somebody's written. You think about this. You can take somebody who's had a tremendously successful life and is maybe coming towards the end of their life, and they've had some major accomplishments in their lifetime. They're the kind of person you really ought to look up to. And a lot of times those people will either write their own autobiography or they will allow someone else to work closely with them so that they can write their biography. And when you can get a hold of a book like that, there's a lot of great things that can happen. And especially, there's actually different kinds of biographies, autobiographies, that can really be of value to you. And one of my favorites is when somebody that's had a lot of experience like that writes a book on what their experiences were and on the things that they learned over their lifetime in the form of lessons to teach other people. And you think about that. That book full of lessons cost them 50, 60, 70, 80 years of their lifetime to learn. And they're offering it to you in a format that you can learn those same lessons in 3, 4, 5 hours of reading time. That's the power of that. And that's why I feel like it's so important for us to develop and become avid readers over the course of our lifetime, whether we liked reading in the past or not. If we didn't, and we allow that to define us for the rest of our lifetime, just imagine on the level of knowledge and wisdom that we're going to miss out on if we don't begin to develop this habit. It's amazing. It can be life-changing. Everything that I'm sharing with you on here almost are things that I've read in other people's writings, or things that by reading another person's writings it has stimulated my thought process to the point where I've made some conclusions that I can share with you. But it's not, I would never have come to all of this knowledge had I not been a reader. And that's one of the things, that's the big reason I wanted to talk about this. And specifically today I want to focus on the concept of autobiographies or biographies of great people, because of exactly that point I just made a minute ago, that they condense many years of lessons down into something you can learn in a tiny investment of your time. And that's a powerful thing. Plus the fact that they can inspire you on to greater and greater efforts in your lifetime. Maybe you're up against a battle in your life right now that you don't know how to win at, but you just might read an autobiography of somebody who fought a battle like that and won, and it may inspire you to go out there and do whatever it takes to be able to win your own battle. And who knows, maybe somewhere down the road, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you just might be writing an autobiography that can change thousands of other people's lives. There's a lot of power in this. I just throw out some examples for you that have been really powerful in my life of people who have lived in the past, well, some of them even alive today, but who have influenced me in the way I do things because of their accomplishments and what they've written down. You think about, I mentioned in an earlier CD about George Washington, Ben Franklin, and Jonathan Edwards, who taught us, among other things, the concept of making resolutions for yourself, making a list of the kind of person you want to become and working at that, and how they were able to change the world because they did that. You think about other people, a man incidentally I'd never heard of, but who's actually very famous and accomplished one of the most incredible things in the history of the Great Britain, and the English colonial empire. And that's a guy named William Wilberforce, who was absolutely instrumental over the course of many years in getting slavery abolished from the English empire. And what incredible lessons we can learn from that guy. Martin Luther King Jr., modern day hero, who, because of the force of his personality and the power of his leadership ability, was able to make a significant change in the world. Winston Churchill, arguably one of the greatest leaders of all time. I mean, there's one single man who stood between Hitler and communism and Nazi Germany and them taking over the world. And that one man, by the sheer force of his personality and his drive and his leadership, stood between them and gave us the free world that we have today. What an amazing guy. You think he's got a few things he could teach us? Yeah, I do. A couple others, my favorite ones from modern day politics. We've got guys like Colin Powell. Here's a guy, gets in the military, becomes a great soldier, and ultimately becomes the first black man to become Secretary of State of the United States and makes some significant contributions to our country. Amazing guy with an amazing story. Some great lessons for us to learn. There's a lot of inspirational stories from the world of sports. In fact, from any other genre where you might find your particular interest going, but for me, sports is always an interesting one. There's the story of John Wooden, who was a basketball coach at UCLA, one of the winningest college basketball coaches of all time. Went from years and years and years of coaching to finally a streak where he won 10 national championships in 12 years, an unheard of feat in the history of college sports. And to top that off, he was the kind of man who not only was he phenomenal at his particular sports profession, because he wasn't all about coaching and winning, he was all about developing his players into young men who were worthy of the title of men. And he's got an entire book on his philosophy of teaching and training and building character and leadership into these young men. Phenomenal book. Another one of my favorites, and I won't say that I always agree with everything that he does in different areas of his life, but Michael Jordan's story, famous basketball player. Phenomenal lessons that we can learn from him of the value of work ethic and determination, goal setting, vision, team playing, lots of things like that. He has definitely an inspirational story. One of my favorites, not everybody necessarily knows so much about him, but I love Steve Young, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. Just an amazing story of where he came from and how he worked his way into professional football to the very top levels of what he did. Another great story is the gymnast Peter Vidmar, and his story and his ability to teach about what it takes to compete at the highest levels of an Olympic sport. Amazing story. Another thing that's a real favorite of mine is watching inspirational videos and movies about inspirational sports stories and things like that. Some of my favorite movies. You think about the Miracle on Ice, the story of the American hockey team that went out and beat the Russians, and what a phenomenal story that was, and tremendous lessons. I love the movie Secretariat. That to me is one of the most inspirational movies I've seen in a long time. But I also like to look for inspirational stories that I can find on YouTube here, for instance. And some of my favorites there are the story of Dick and Rick Hoyt, who are serious Ironman triathletes, where the dad participates by pushing and carrying his handicapped son throughout the entire course of an Ironman. That's amazing to me. The story of Susan Boyle, the English cleaning lady who became a superstar because she was granted an audition on Britain's Got Talent, and just exploded into the world because of her phenomenal talent that was hidden, and somebody allowed her to see it. A couple of other stories from sports. There's a Vince Papale story of a young bartender in Philadelphia who got a chance on a fluke to try out for the Philadelphia Eagles and actually made the team and became a core part of that team. Amazing story there. Eric Weinmeier, the first blind man to ever climb Mount Everest. And they can go on and on and on. Just those kind of stories in our lives teach us principles and inspire us in ways that we can't get any other way. So I challenge you, go after educating yourself. Get those inspirational points in your life and go out and win. We'll see you.